Hi everyone, it's Julia from Z Square Crafts. Thank you so much for tuning in to this YouTube video. Today I'm creating a card for the Alleyway Stamps. I'm using the most adorable Christmas set called Mistletoe Kisses. This is a great little Christmas set because there's so many images included. You can create scenes, you can create backgrounds, you can do so much. So for today I'm going to be using the tree as well as the snowman that are included in the stamp set. I'm stamping my images using Memento Tuxedo black ink because I'm going to use my alcohol markers, and it's a alcohol marker friendly ink. And I am stamping onto some Spectrum Noir 100-pound smooth white cardstock. This is my favorite for using my Spectrum Noir markers. So to color in the trees, I'm going to apply the color with my Spectrum Noir markers, and I'm kind of just using like a sweeping motion. I'm just being very careful to make sure that I don't overblend these trees. You can see I'm layering the color. I started with my lightest, which almost kind of turned into a base color, which is fine. And then as I feather on the rest of the colors, especially here with this darkest color, you can see that they really start to look more like trees. To sort of blend it together, I then reverse the order, going back to my mid-tone, feathering that on, and then going back with my lightest as well, just to make sure that everything looked smooth more than blended. I wanted to ensure to keep that feathering look because, again, I find that it kind of makes it look more like a Christmas tree. So I colored all of my trees the exact same way, and then for the bases I started by applying a dark color, what did I use? I used TN8, and then I went back in with a lighter color. And I'm so sorry that I don't know that off the top of my head, but it will be listed over on my blog. For my snowman, I wanted to add just a little bit of color around the edges just so that he still had a little bit of dimension. I don't like leaving things white like the color of the paper just because I find that they look flat in that case. So I'm adding a very light gray blue around the edges, and then I'm using my colorless blender to kind of fade that in towards the center. For the little carrot nose, I used two colors of orange, and then I used two colors of darker gray for the hat. I didn't want to use just black because, again, that turns into a fairly flat look. So I used a dark gray and then a slightly less dark gray to color in his little hat there. And that at least leaves a little bit of dimension. For this scarf, I went with some turquoise colors because it kind of coordinates with the rest of my card, which you'll see in a minute. So I started by laying down BT1, which is very light. In fact, if I were going to do this, I probably wouldn't even bother with that step. I then went in with BT4, which was my darkest, and then I blended everything out with BT2. For the background area of my focal panel, I'm going to use some faux embossing paste. So if you watch my channel regularly, you'll know that my favorite embossing paste alternative is white acrylic caulking. Just exactly like the stuff that you buy at your hardware store. Here in Canada, it costs about $2 a tube. And for me, it is a perfect replacement for embossing paste. You can color it the exact same way that you would like with your re-inkers or your distressings, that kind of thing. It's really just the exact same as the embossing paste, but for me, I live in a small town, so it's just a lot more readily available and it's very inexpensive. I set that panel aside, and by the way, for that background, I just used a homemade stencil that I cut on my Silhouette portrait machine from a piece of acetate. I rinse that off and reuse it regularly. I cut some hillside borders here, two different ones, so that I would have a little bit of dimension because I'm going to create a scene with the images that I colored earlier. And I wanted to create a little bit of definition and kind of make it look more like the snow is the same as the snowman. So if you recall, I used a kind of light blue to color him in. So I'm using Distress Ink and my mini blending tool. The Distress Ink is Evergreen Bough, and I'm making sure to not apply too much ink. I started around the edges because I wanted those to be the most defined, but then I dab off my ink blender before I pull that ink down onto the rest of the panel. I used a very light hand for this step, and in the end, I really like how it creates a frosty little look to go with my little snowman and his scene. I wanted to jazz up these trees just a little bit more because this is going to be a holiday card. So I'm using my fine tip applicator and some Ranger multi matte medium to apply little dots of glue, and then I'm going to use my tweezers to apply some seed beads. These are just clear sparkling seed beads. I believe I got these at the dollar store. This looks like it might be kind of finicky, but really it went very quickly. I recommend using the tweezers. It's just a little bit easier than your fingers. So now comes time to assemble the scene. I've cut everything down to a square panel that is 3.5 by 3.5, so I also trimmed down my little hillside borders here. I use my permanent tape runner to adhere those together, and then I will use the same permanent tape runner to adhere those directly to that panel that is now completely dry. Don't forget to let your embossing paste dry completely before you start working with it, because it's just the worst to smear it all over your project. Okay, so I need to assemble everything. I'm again using my multi-matte medium. This is my favorite glue because it dries basically when it dries you can't see it at all, so even with those little seed beads where I did get a little bit of glue squeezing out around the edges, you don't see that when it's finished. Before I adhere down my little snowman, I almost forgot, but I needed to stamp my greeting. I'm using the Season's Greeting stamp that comes in the same Mistletoe Kisses stamp set, and I just stamped that using the same black Memento ink. And again, and I mention this I think every video, I just like for my black inks to match, so that's why I chose that one. To adhere down my snowman, I used a little liquid adhesive on his body. I also used a tiny clear foam square for his hat, just because there was a little bit of dimension with the 2 layers of that hillside border. Next, to complete this little focal panel, I'm going to adhere a piece of teal or very light frosty blue paper behind it, just so that it has a little mat. To finish off everything, I'm going to use my black gel pen to enhance the eyes of my snowman, and of course, no Christmas card is complete with a little glimmer, so I'm using my clear wink of Stella on his hat, nose, and scarf. To finish it, I just used some double-sided adhesive to mount that panel to an A2 size card base, and everything is complete. Thank you so much for tuning into this YouTube video today. I hope that I've inspired you to check out these Christmas stamps. I will be back again soon with another how-to video, and in the meantime, take care. Bye!